Hello, and welcome to another episode of Point to Point. It is the show where I drive from one point to another and try to get to the point. Today's episode is it's a little bit about horror games and it's a little bit about psychology. Today's episode is, I've been reading reviews for the new Silent Hill game coming out, and I'm having a really weird reaction, which is, I think I want to play it. I am not a horror game person. If you've read some of the posts on the website, you would know that I'm in the middle of my pivot to horror, but I'm still a big baby. And the thing is, and this is something I kind of talk a little bit about in an upcoming video about dystopia and why we like to read dystopian fiction or play dystopian stories when we kind of are living in one. And it kind of comes down to something I've been feeling with horror games in general, and something that I've been thinking about a lot with Bloodborne too. And it's basically that I feel like when things are pretty awful out, the ability to play horror games or like experience horror medium is just like, it comes back to a little bit of psychological safety, right? And I'm sure this is something that a lot of the people who watch horror films and kind of experience this media in general already know this. But if you are a fellow weenie like I am, the thing that has kind of got me over the hump into trying these games is that, you know, the realization that, you know, none of this can hurt me, right? When like when everything else seems to be psychologically traumatizing me in the real world, it's nice to just like hang back and watch a scary thing happen on a screen, or read a scary short story, because what could this thing possibly do to me that, you know, cannot that can compete with the rise of modern fascism. And so I've been thinking about Silent Hill, and I've been thinking about giving it a go because it looks spooky and it looks really cool. And I've never really touched any of those games. I've never really touched, I mean, God, this feels worse than saying I haven't played any Resident Evils, but I've only played Resident Evil 5. So it's this thing where I feel like this is like the better of two evils, kind of, to experience this. And it's something that I talk a bit about more in that dystopia video. But the thing that I'm kind of thinking about constantly now is like these games are like, they can be a means of exploring worst case scenarios in like a safer, you know, quote unquote safer light, you know, like there's still triggering themes and, like, you know, some real bad stuff in there. But the more that I think about it, the more, you know, and we do this with sci-fi games too, right? Like, you know, we explore what it's like to be an astronaut stuck on a planet all by ourselves. I'm playing the Altars right now. And we can, like, the Altars also, like, we can explore what it's like to see different lives and different branch points, and kind of how that affects a human, and kind of how that affects you as a person. And so the more that I think about it, the more I think that people should follow traffic laws. The more that I think about it, the more it just seems like horror games are like, I'm still not there for the scares, right? I think that's kind of the other thing here, is that I'm not there for the scares. I don't like the jump scares. I still don't like love all of that stuff. I like the spooky vibes, and I like, you know, how they find new ways to do interesting things with horror mechanics. But like, I still don't like being scared, but I do like being in like spooky environments and like trying to, you know, deal with the mounting dread of what is going on in here, which is probably why I'm gravitating more towards like pulpy, 1920s, more modern takes on Lovecraft's bad stuff. Or like the game that I come back to all the time is like being a good horror game that stuck with me, because it's more of like a thriller than a horror game, is Observation on the PlayStation 4 is like probably the first actual horror game I sat down and played. And that was like abstracted out so far that, it was mostly just, this is a spooky spaceship times. And it wasn't all that, it was shocking, but it wasn't terrifying. So as the years have gone on, I've like started tiptoeing into it a little bit more. And like, I want to, explore some of this stuff a little bit more, which is like, I think hot off the heels of me spending a couple weeks earlier this year playing Wolfenstein, which is not a horror game, right? But when we talk about psychological safety and using games as a medium to explore, themes that make us feel icky or things that are like existentially terrifying, coming back to a world that seems to have been Nazified overnight, but actually it's taken almost 20 years, feels relevant, right? So it's one of those things that like going in there, like that was much more of a power fantasy experience of like, okay, let's get in there and let's blow off some steam. But now that, I've used that as like this way to, experience these themes that I don't love so much, but find a way to enjoy the game that is exploring them, I'm starting to feel the same way about horror. And I think that this is a great way to, look at games and look at a way of expanding your taste. And like, this is part of the process that I went through with Expedition 33, is that I was hoping, at least, that playing Expedition 33, a turn-based RPG, which is a type of game that I don't necessarily play a lot of or enjoy very much, I was hoping this would be like a good gateway, and it wasn't. But I did learn a little bit about that as well. So now I just feel like, okay, I've given Hellraiser a read. I have like explored, like watched Alien recently and remembered that I liked that, so I bought a copy of Mothership as like a fun get together with some friends to play some tabletop games about aliens. And now I'm thinking, okay, like Bloodborne got me with a couple of jump scares and just like that vibe is dreadful in a good way. And now I think it's time, let's see like what's up with Silent Hill F as like the new Silent Hill. It also seems to be like, I don't know. I watched a little bit of the Silent Hill remake and it did not seem like my jam. Some of the reviews are saying that Silent Hill F is kind of what I'm looking for. I'm going to read a couple more and see if that holds true. But I think it all comes back to a very like, real psychology here. But I think it all comes back to a little bit of like building on your own kind of cognitive behavioral therapy about exposure to, things that you don't necessarily want to enjoy all the time or like make you feel a certain way. And now like now that you have like a bit of a gateway, you can kind of tiptoe into it and you can find your comfort areas. You can push yourself a little bit further. And I think that's where I'm at with horror games right now. And I think it's just interesting that it's like this cool thing where, we have like this amount of, like there are just games out there that for the longest time I said was not for me. Like I would not explore these at all. And it's also this thing where there are all these games out there that people are saying, wow, these are really good. You should play them. They're fantastic. And I was like, no, not for me. I do not like the jump scares or the spooky monsters. I am simply here to have a good time. And it turns out, surprise, surprise, you can have a good time in those games too. I just think that it takes a little bit of openness to them to like sit down and actually play through some things that will make you uncomfortable. And then I also think that, you can tiptoe your way towards enjoying them. Like I don't know if I'm ever going to sit down and try to find a copy of PT and have a good night of it with PT. That's, that even might be too far for me. But as we kind of, think about games moving forward, like Silent Hill F is coming out. There's the like fabled the Kojima game OD, right? The Xbox exclusive horror game that has all of his scanned friends in it or something. And I had no interest in playing that because horror game. But, as that game is a little bit further out, I'm thinking about, well, maybe in the next couple, in the next month, like in spooky season, maybe into November, like I'll give Silent Hill F a try. Maybe I'll hop into Still Wakes the Deep because I do like the Scots, and that's a good Scots game. And then, like, I have stuff like The Sinking City or, like, Call of Cthulhu, like, all of these other, like, horror-adjacent survival horror games that, give you a little bit of power, and then, who knows? I technically have a copy of Amnesia: The Dark Descent on my Steam account. I did play it for 10 minutes, ran out of matches, got munched by a monster, and then I was like, no, thank you, I'm out. But maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to go back. And that is all, like, tiptoeing, right? That is all, like, slowly stepping towards, like, building up the confidence to play these games and, like, experience these emotions and, like, build the psychological safety net of, like, this is not real, this cannot hurt you. It is not nearly as bad as the stuff that is hurting you. Like, we can, like, find strategies to work through this. And, like, that is something that I have had a personal history with, just, like, with actual real life things. And I think going through that experience has also helped me work with this. But yeah, it's interesting to, like, go back and play some of these games, or even, like, think about playing a Silent Hill game now, when I just simply would not have. Like, it was not my bag at all. So I'm excited to go give it a shot. I'm going to read some more reviews and see if it is, like, hitting the things that I want. The Silent Hill remake seemed like it was a lot of wandering through a foggy town in, like, survival horror mode, and that's not, like, exactly what I want, but we'll see. But yeah, I guess if I were to put a bow on this whole episode and kind of wrap it up a little bit, I would say you can tiptoe your way into things that you may not like simply by experiencing tangential things and, like, really, really figuring out, like, do you want to be a person who's able to try this? And, like, as, like, me, I would like to, like, constantly evolve my taste and learn new things that I like. And, the thing I've always tried to avoid being is the person who only listens to music that they listen to when they're in high school. And just, like, that person, but just, like, spread out, like, across all media, like, everything that I consume. Like, I don't want to be a person who, like, only likes reading the books that I read in high school, or only being a person who thinks that retro games from when I was a kid are, like, the best games out there. Because I just think fundamentally that's not how art works. And, like, you can still have reverence for those things without, locking yourself off to the future. And, like, right now, for me, that's also in a genre mode where I'm trying to work my way into these other genres to, like, experience them in a way that, I haven't really before, or kind of at all. And there are more games and, like, more genres that I'm thinking about exploring and finding ways to get into. Playing Bloodborne. Like, besides Elden Ring, I am not really a Souls person. But, let's get there. Like Blasphemous. Let's kind of work towards a 2D Metroidvania and, like, see if I can find one that I like. And then use that as a jumping off point to explore other stuff. And that's kind of what I'm doing with horror games too. Like, I want to see Silent Hill F and see, okay, like, is this working for me? What about this is working? What about it isn't? Where can I find different pieces of this? And, like, who knows? This might end with me playing Resident Evil 4 because I like the survival horror stuff, or it might be me playing Fatal Frame. And like literally, who knows? And I think that that's like the fun part of this. So you can tiptoe your way into new genres. You can tiptoe your way into new media. All you have to do is, have an open heart about it and really be in touch with yourself about how it goes, and like when you can like jump in and when it's time to just call it quits and move on. It's been a fun experience doing that so far, and if all goes well, you may actually see a Silent Hill F review from me in the next couple weeks, which is not something I would have said when Silent Hill F was announced, let alone like 6 months ago. So I guess stay tuned. We'll see what that ends up being. But thanks for hanging out with me. This is gonna have to call it for today's episode of Point to Point. Stay psychologically safe out there and try new things. You never know. Maybe you will like pickles in your middle age. It could happen to you. Go check out the website, 70percentcomplete.com. I've got a video, like I mentioned, on Dystopia coming out this week. Maybe next week. We'll see. I also have a playthrough of Jet the Far Shore that I'm finishing up pretty soon, so I'm thinking about launching those all at the same time. Another video about Expedition 33 and the transporter hypothesis. What does that mean? And then, let's see, another secret project is coming out on Wednesday. We'll talk about that more when it's out. I'm very excited about that. That's going to be a fun time. And otherwise, go to the Corner of the Internet Discord. Links are in the description down there. Chat about this episode. What new things, like what new flavors are you trying these days? And let's see, what else? That's it. Go to YouTube. Join the Discord, please. I would love to chat with you about some of this stuff. This is how I find new things, is just chatting with people about it. And then also go to the website. That's it. Bye.